So welcome everyone that's joining live, just getting set up. Give us a couple seconds here. So excited for this conversation today. All right. All right, we're good on YouTube and we're good on Facebook. All right, let's get into it. Starting recording in 3, 2, and 1. Good morning, evening, afternoon, magical beings. Welcome back to the show. Welcome back to another spiritual, mystical, loving conversation into a topic I know is going to expand your heart space today. That topic being evolving relationships, intimacy, and a new paradigm. I have the beautiful pleasure to have a divine guest to help me go into all things relationships and intimacy and newness. But before I get to her and the chat we're going to have for all the people joining new and familiar, this is live today. So if you are joining on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn, pop your comments in the comment section and I'm going to try and add you into the show as we go. If you're new to the podcast at large and this hits your heart today, brings you some guidance, brings you some love, please share this out far and wide to a friend, a family member, a lover that you think it will hit and help expand. You can also leave your feedback and comments over on Apple and Spotify to help the conversations roll and help me pick topics that I know are going to help you heal and help you see more of yourself. Speaking of topics, today we are talking about all things relationships, intimacy, and specifically looking ahead, looking into a new understanding around what intimacy and relationships are. What is tribal living and its relationship to evolving relationships? What are spiritual partnerships? Learning to share intimacy more directly, polyamory, monogamy, and all the things. To do this dance today and have this dance today, I have my lovely friend Leah Drew here on the show. Leah is a beautiful pain management specialist. She's a trauma-informed mind-body mentor, and she's a beautiful, loving, holistic heart. Leah, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Thanks, Harrison. I always love doing these things with you in all of the ways, getting to talk with you and manifest with you and co-create and really just like dive deeper into levels of awareness as human beings. One of the things I love so much about you is that you're always really pushing this understanding. When I say pushing, I want to say testing the walls and pushing the walls and expanding your capacity for human relationships in so many ways. And so I know that we certainly have that in common, and it's an honor to be here with you and really dive deep into this topic of conversation today, because I really truly feel that the world needs this right now in many aspects. And as we shift into this new world of Aquarius, I really truly feel and am observing, and not just you and I, but in those around us, all of these dynamics in relationships, not just intimate and sexual, but platonic, changing and shifting. And so, yeah, I'm just super excited to dive into like all the juiciness today of all of it.
Yeah, me too, Leah. And thank you for all the love. I was reflecting on this chat before we got started, and our relationship, I think, is an example of what we're going to be talking about today. And I'll give some examples of what that looks like. But it is evolving, it is expanding. And as people are joining live, I see some faces on Facebook. Thank you for joining, Trin. I see you there, Beth. I would encourage everyone who is joining live or listening to the podcast, really tune into what your relationship is at the moment, and not just intimate romantic ones. I've spoken about that a lot, not just this week, but on the show in general, but also your friendship dynamics, your family dynamics. These are all relationship examples of what we'll be going into today. So as some of the examples flow and some of the things we talk about, compare it to your world and ask, okay, is this what I'm currently living, or is there something I need to shift and change? So, Leah, I guess where I want to start with this conversation is what are you seeing? What are you seeing individually starting to shift, right? Because I did a show earlier this week, for example, and I was going to share this with you on the topic of spiritual partnerships from a book called the same name, Spiritual Partnerships by Gary Zukov. And this is not a new thing. This has been a slowly expanding thing. But I'm wondering what you are seeing, Leah, now in your life that has sort of kicked you in the bum to maybe start to talk about this more.
Totally. And I feel like that's such a complex answer, and there's just like a whole
Yeah.
spider web.
And we'll go into all of it.
Well, first of all, I think a really important thing to note here, and that I'm going to invite those that are listening to this into here, is to move past your surface mind, to move past that surface mind, which is all of the beliefs and thoughts and understandings and societal standards and all of the things that we have been taught to know based off of someone and something outside of us, externally. And when we move past the surface mind, we get to go into the deeper mind, and we get to really tune into what do we know, right? What is within us? What is that deep understanding that doesn't always make sense? Like sometimes it makes no freaking sense at all, but it is. And it's not an easy thing to navigate, moving past that surface mind, because that surface mind is always going to come back up, especially in the age of technology, right? We have so many options and so many things in front of us. And I do in some ways think that that is why all of these things around relationships are coming up, because we're seeing that there are more options, right?
Yeah.
And as we are reconnecting with our consciousness and our deeper knowing within ourselves and our knowledge, right? Our really deep knowledge that is source, I believe that people are coming to the realization that there is more that they get to have.
Yeah.
And a lot of what I'm seeing, and I'm going to talk generally for a second within those around me.
Yeah.
I'm very particular about who I surround myself with. I'm very discerning about who I spend my time with. And yes, my family and all the people that may not necessarily be on that same deeper level of knowing as myself, they're still part of my world. It's just a matter of like boundaries, right? Energetic boundaries. And how do I allow them to show up? And what I'm seeing and a lot of the people that are really close in my community is that there's this theme happening where they're looking at their dynamics and their relationships, and they're powerful, and there's this deep knowing that they're meant to be there. And a lot of them are the opposite sex relationships. And we're going to specifically use just like male, female in this conversation, at least from my perspective at the moment. And a lot of what I'm seeing is a lot of my female friends have these dynamics with male friends that may not necessarily be sexual and may be deeply intimate and deeply rooted in connection. And there may not necessarily be that drive to have sex and to procreate. Although that is within us, there's also that deeper knowing within them that either A, it's not the right time and space for that within the dynamic, or B, it's just not meant to be at all. And I'm also seeing in many of the communities around me that there's an interest in polyamorous dynamics, which is something that you brought up. And I am coming to the personal belief that we look, as humans, we look at polyamorous dynamics because it's intriguing to us. It's something that we haven't been taught, something that we haven't been shown, something that is like, oh, like I can have that, like that too, right? There's more, right? So it's like this, like the steak that's like
forbidden.
In front of
It's like a forbidden fruit in many ways. Pause there for a second, Leah, because I want to come back to the polyamory aspect versus monogamy, because that's a very, it's a whole topic in itself, and I do want to hit on it today. But let's let's step back to what you said around, wanting something more beyond maybe procreation or coming together to build a family. And I also believe that those still are there, and we all deserve to have those things if that is an option we wish to go down. But there's something else, right? There's a layer on top of there's a desire of wanting to co-create something more than a physical human, right? And I think this is the question I want to sort of dive into now. And for people joining live, if you're noticing this in your lives, this necessity or this urge or desire, I think the right word is to co-create something more, you can let us know. But when I ask you this question, Leah, what do you think that more is when this desire is there to co-create with another person, whether same sex or not, whether romantic or not? What is that more? What is that moreness that we're trying to co-create within?
Great question. And I think there's a lot in this, as there's a lot in this whole conversation. I think when we talk about more, there's more connection, there's more vulnerability, more depth, more being seen and being heard, more touch and love, and more purpose.
That's the
And
word. That's the word.
I have a beautiful human in my life that drives me deeper into this contemplation of relationships and dynamics and labels, and really helps put that mirror in front of me and really look deeply at these thoughts and beliefs I hold. And something that he always says to me is that relationships are about what you can do with someone.
Mm.
And I love that reminder, because I believe that we are stepping into this different paradigm, especially as we are seeing this wider spread this widespread amount of entrepreneurs emerging in the world, people that feel a call to this purpose and want to support humanity and upleveling. And when we talk about more, I think something that that I'm seeing that humans are craving is more of a desire to unite with someone in a way that's not necessarily partnership unity
Yeah.
through sexual
Yeah.
connection, but this unity through purpose, and
Yeah.
looking at like, what is it that I can create and do with this person? What purpose can we align on together?
Yeah. I think I love it. I think let's expand this, not just what purpose can we align on together. Something I'm noticing just in my own world, this desire and urge coming up within me is alignment, co-creating purpose together, but also in the 3D, in the physical. And this really sort of shifts now into communal, tribal, earthly connection that I want to get your perspective on. We've spent the last 2 or 3 years, as I'm sure everyone here can relate, either listening or tuning in live, being very separate from each other. We've had, the advancements of Zoom and all these technologies that I'm very grateful for that help us still have some kind of connection. But what I'm seeing is a remembering and a desire to come back to tribal, communal, and sort of 3D connection, earthly, right? So rather than me having the desire to co-create with Leah over Zoom, I'm noticing more of a desire to co-create with Leah in the 3D and the extra juiciness that adds. So what are your thoughts on this, Leah? What is the role of this urge to come back to a sort of communal, tribal co-creation with this purpose within it?
Yeah. And I absolutely resonate with that. And one, I can't wait till you and I actually get to like physically hug in human form. Like
It's gonna
it's
be
just gonna be
magical. It's
so
gonna be
good.
magical.
Like those great 5-minute hugs that you're just like, I can't pull myself off. But yes, there's two big things that I see here. The first one is, I think that we're coming to the realization and the understanding that one person cannot give and fulfill every part and every aspect of you as a human. And you think about the last couple of generations, and you think about how much of our country, I wouldn't say our country, but much of our lands have hold people and lineages that have migrated to the space, to the land, a lot of times fleeing from war, fleeing from a space of unsafety towards a new place that they can land. And in that, there has been this shift away from tribal communities into dynamics of husband and wife. And this husband and this wife come together, unite, have the kids, and they do everything to just the two of them. And I think that we're seeing a large amount of stress that's been added to our lives because of that. And I think we're coming to this understanding, this realization that this one person truly cannot be everything for us. And I think that's a big part of us shifting back into the need for tribe and the need for living within communities. And you're seeing this pop up all over the freaking world, right? So there's that aspect here of one person cannot be everything for you. And I think people are coming to more of an awareness of that.
Can I ask something with that? And this might be your second point where you're going here. How do we balance that? Because I agree. I've seen that in my own life, but I've also seen the converse. And I'm gonna quote you here. This is something that you said. There is a craving for full unity with another that we have been put on this earth to co-create with, right? Like there's a desire inside of us, and I've felt this desire to. It's almost like a losing of oneself, a losing and seeing of oneself beyond all masks, beyond all judgment, beyond all past pains and traumas, in the arms, in the hands, in the body, in the eyes of someone else, one other person. So how do we balance that? How do we balance both these polarities that I think are very true?
Yes. And I don't think that that's necessarily an easy answer or an easy journey. And that's part of, oh my God, me and my roommate had such a deep freaking conversation about this the other day, about how when someone, and I'm going to speak about myself here, me and my roommate, Valerie, amazing human, we have this deep desire for this higher level of a relationship. And when I say higher level, I mean this desire to be so freaking good on our own, and then just so much even more powerful in purpose, in unity with this other person, and this ability to communicate deeply, to be seen and be heard, and to see and to hear the other person, to collaborate, to support in a way that brings a level of spirituality and consciousness and a deeper sense of connecting with that note. And when you want that, and when you call that into your world, the universe, God, spirit, whatever higher power you follow, believe in, understand to be true, they just put it right on a silver platter for you. And you're like, well, you want that? Well, let's go. We're gonna learn all these lessons, and we're gonna do all these things so that you understand how to not lose yourself in you. And I think that is one of the most challenging, can be one of the most brutal paths, to have to learn how to fully hold on to and connect with and be with yourself in relation with another person. And I think that's something that we have lost in what we were talking about a little earlier, in this coming into husband and wife, and you are everything, you are everything to me. Like we have lost a sense of ourselves. And so I really believe that there's many ways to go about this, taking relationships slow. I think that if you're finding yourself and looking in the mirror and saying, this person completes me, this person is my everything, then I personally invite you to take a step back and look at why or do you not feel that way about yourself.
Yeah. I think
And
I think
yeah,
that's an example too, Leah, of the old paradigm, right? The old paradigm of a relationship, as we were speaking about earlier, not just being there to procreate and create a child, but also there to complete us, right? A relationship being another means to an end, right? Another thing that we're using to get to an outcome. So I want to go back to your other point though. So you were sharing around the tribal living, and there was a second point. We're talking about the not one person can complete us, but then there's this balance between tribal living and the desire to get lost in the oneness. What was the second point that you were about to bring up?
yes. And this one's a big one and may bring up some feelings within those that are watching and listening. But I think that the other point to really deeply understand here is the lack of resources of our earth. And in the coming years, in the next 20 years, we're going to find ourselves in big trouble with the way that we are consuming and the lack of awareness that we are bringing to the way that we are using and abusing Mother Earth and not supporting and integrating with. And so that's an aspect that I see in regards to why we are in need of coming back into community, coming back into tribes, because yes, again, like alone you can do nothing, together you can do everything,
Yeah.
right? And one person cannot be everything, cannot do everything. But when you
Yeah.
come together in tribe, we have roles and we have this ecosystem, and every person holds a part of that ecosystem so that that ecosystem can run and can be and can grow and flourish. And so I believe that through coming back into community, it's going to be a way that we can conserve resources, that we can save the earth and support her and come into union with her, not
Yeah.
just with ourselves and those people.
I love this, Leah. This, and for everyone that's tuning in, to be very clear around this, I think this will be a symptom of this new intimacy, this new relationship paradigm we're having with ourselves and with our partners, friends, family members. Because as we start to, one of my favorite understandings around intimacy, I'm sure you're familiar with it, Leah, is, into me you see, right? As we start to go deeper into ourselves, right? And then that ripples out to our friend, our romantic partner, our family member. That ripple isn't going to just stop at them, right? It's going to start rippling out to the other big relationship that we have. And as you said, that's with the Mother Earth, but it's also going to, a symptom of that is going to be a remembering that we've always been contracted with her, right? I talk about a lot of soul contracts on the show, a lot of spiritual soul family. And we often forget that part of our soul family is the earth. She's always been there. She's always been there wanting us to realize that. And I think as we go deeper into our own awakening, and this is the next question I want to ask you, Leah, that's one of the symptoms is this now urge to support her, nourish her through this tribal new paradigm of relationships. But my question for you, Leah, is what is the role stepping forward in these new relationship paradigms of our own spiritual awakening? Right? What is the role of really showing up for ourselves as an example in our devotional acts, right? In our meditation, in our breath work, in, seeing that coach, seeing that mentor, seeing that guide outside of us to awaken more to our spiritual essence.
I think that's a great question. And it really brings me back to going beneath their surface mind and really coming to understand what is it that you actually know? What is it that you know? And that's a big question that I've been sitting with. And that is not an easy question to answer. But there's a difference between what you truly know and what you believe. and what you've been told to believe. And so I know that through coming to that understanding within yourself, through meditation, right? Connecting to source, connecting to that internal self, that deeper mind, and working with coaches and that can be a mirror for you and offer reflections and feedback and observations and help you move through patterns and heal the trauma. Because as you take away these layers, and I love what you said, and I love how the earth is the conversation that led us into here, because we have truly, in my opinion, gotten away from being in sync with the earth. And when you come back into sync with the earth, it allows these layers to fall away because you are connected. You are deeply connected with source when you are in sync with the earth. And the more you are connected with source, with, as above, so below, as within, so without, right? So as you're more deeply connected with source externally and internally, those pieces can come together and that bridge can be built. And, I can speak personally on this. For me, I recently moved from California to Colorado in the United States. And I grew up on the East Coast in Massachusetts. And so I'm very familiar with the seasons, winter, spring, summer, fall, all the things. And when I went to California, it was amazing. It was beautiful. And it gave me an opportunity to be with the sun and to connect with my fire and to really understand my purpose in the world. But what it did simultaneously is it took me away from being in sync with the earth and being in sync with the season. And so I moved to Colorado right at the tail end of the winter time. And so this is the first spring that I've had in 4 years. And it has been a mind-boggling experience for me, tuning back into this energy of spring and seeing everywhere and just all the green and all the blooming flowers, and I'm stopping to smell the lilacs everywhere. Right. And simultaneously, as I'm doing that in the last 4 weeks, I have had these layers strip away from me, all these belief systems, all these things that I thought that I knew and believed. And it's allowing me to really connect with what is within, to connect with my deeper mind, to connect with source. And through that, we make ripple effects in the world.
Yeah.
And
in all the ways.
Exactly. And so that's where I see that being, that I believe that is our responsibility.
Yeah. Our responsibility in all relationships, right? You gave the beautiful example of the earth and your traveling and changing and that being the shift needed. But I think it's our responsibility in all our different relationship dynamics, right? To show up fully beyond that which has been programmed or that which we think we know. This brings up another sort of potentially triggering component here. And I share this from my own experience and tuning into the audience. I'm sure this is a question that everyone has. As we start to shift into maybe what these new paradigms are and what these new types of relationships will be across every aspect, friends, romantic, family, with the earth, something that's bound to happen, Leah, is some of our relationships might be left behind, right? Some of our current/old relationships, they might not last within the transition, right? And I'll share an example in my world recently. I had a relationship shift very unexpectedly, and in my own inner world, it brought up a lot of unprocessed wounds of abandonment and rejection and all these things. So my question for you, Leah, is what does one start to do? What is maybe the first step that someone in an older relationship paradigm that is no longer serving and they shift in to this new one, but their partner can no longer be with them and that relationship has to terminate or has to end or transition out? And then that brings up shadows, right? That brings up wounds, that brings up past pain. What is the first step that person can take to start to move through that?
Well, first of all, I want to send you some love and just hold your heart because it's not an easy process for you, for anyone to move through. And, you know, there's aspects of us that unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, have to die. And in order for us to bring in the new life, and especially when you're living a journey into alignment, sometimes as you shift and change and become aware of these beliefs and thoughts that may not be serving you and connect with that knowledge within yourself, oftentimes the external begins to change, right? Because as within, so without, like as the internal changes, the external is going to change too. And sometimes it may feel on the opposite. Sometimes it may feel like the external is shifting before the internal, and sometimes it might, but usually there's something deeper within yourself to look at that might be, why is this happening? What stimulated this? Right? And so sending love to anybody that is moving through this right now. And I know I've moved through this myself over the coming months. I had someone in my world that was a beautiful and really powerful friend for me that I've just come to feel as though they're not so much in alignment with where I am and who I want around me, and with my purpose and why I'm here and what I'm here to do and how I'm here to serve. And so my recommendation in moving through these types of challenges, especially if it's someone that's been a part of your life, a very impactful part of your life for an extended period of time, coming back to you. And this is what we were talking about earlier, is always tuning back into yourself, like really strengthening and developing that relationship with you so that you can have a stronger relationship with the external, with those around you. And as you continue to come back into yourself and connect with what is it that you know, because again, like you might know that this relationship is no longer serving you and it no longer feels good. And I would encourage you, like, why doesn't it feel good? Because looking at if it doesn't feel good because it's just like, maybe not with in alignment with like how I think the world should look, or does it not feel good because you truly know within you it is not right? My gut feeling, my gut instinct, my gut knowing.
Mm.
And tuning back into yourself and like and connecting with that knowing within you.
Mm.
And it's gonna be hard.
Yeah.
Like losing people, losing things, losing relationships, it's gonna be hard. We're humans. We need to find meaning in things, and we want to hold on to things because we like to control, because in control we find a sense of calm, because things then don't shift and change as much.
A friend shared a funny joke with me the other day that connects to what you're saying. And the joke is, what's the best way to make God laugh? And the answer was, share your plans with him or her. And it's what that joke highlights in many ways is what you're saying. A lot of the suffering, a lot of the pain, a lot of the tension, resistance from most things in life, but specifically a relationship shift and transition, comes from, as you said, our most likely unconscious urge to control, to fit this relationship we are currently in into a box of perception that is no longer serving us. But as we've talked about today, that box we haven't allowed to let go of. We haven't released it. We haven't surrendered through it. So I would add on to what you're saying, Leah. There's a lot of surrender here. There's a lot of self-acceptance. And there's a lot of understanding that while we've been talking about trusting your inner knowing, it's also okay to not know, right? It's also okay to take that step forward. And when I say not know, I mean that mind, right? That mind that does like to control, that mind that does like to know what's coming next. It's okay for it not to know what's coming next. If you're, and this is maybe where we can go next here, Leah, if you're following your heart, right? If you're following what that heart pull is. In your experience, Leah, from personally starting to shift into this world and understanding around what these new paradigms are, or maybe you've seen this with people you work with, what is the role of the heart in all of this? What is the role of our big heart center in helping us maybe shine a light towards what these new relationship paradigms are for us?
I think that's a really interesting question, right? Because you and I were having a conversation the other day, and that heart being the connection to all, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the middle, it is the balance. It is the balance point. It is what brings it all together, and pumps it up, literally, and sends it back out to the world, to your body, to your being. And I think the heart has so many roles. I really do. I think it has so many roles, and I think it's that ability to guide you from within. I believe it's also bringing you that ability to connect with the things around you and within you, so that you can discern, like, am I being guided from within? And I love what you said, because yeah, it's important to connect with what you know, but sometimes you don't freaking know. And the heart is the easiest way to tune into what you feel.
Yeah.
And you also want to be discerning with that too, because sometimes what you feel is not necessarily totally in alignment with what you know and what truly is. But it also is a great opportunity for you to come to that discernment of what is that next step to take. Even if you don't know what what it's going to look like on the other side of that step or on the other side of that wall, that heart is something that you can always tune back into.
Yeah.
And it is that center of you.
Yeah.
You know? And
I think this,
that's the easiest way to say it, but I'm curious what you have to say about this.
Yeah, I'm gonna take it a bit deeper here. Leon, like, oh, this is my field now. Well, it's all been my field, but now we're getting into the deepness. So I want to take it back to something you said before about the pieces of us that need to die. And I'm going to speak about that, but I just want to welcome all the people joining live on Facebook. I see all of your beautiful comments. Trin is really resonating, Leah, with what you're saying. She's giving you a lot of love and connecting to your beautiful points. If you are joining live, if you have any comments or questions, please pop them in. We'd love to add them into the show. So I want to go back to what you said around, shifting into these paradigms. We have to accept that parts of us are going to die. And I simultaneously believe that this is where the heart comes in. And I also believe that this is the role of the heart in this new intimacy, this new relationship, belief system, if you want to call it that, as we step into it in the future. And it is the role of the heart being the soothing tool that we use to move through the darkness. So you said parts of us need to die. And I don't believe that you have this belief system, but most of us do, that death is the end. That when something dies, it means it's ending, it's the completion, and that's it. And while I think that is a part of death, there's more to it. We also know that death is a beautiful transformation. Like when the physical body dies, is that the end of what makes Harrison Harrison? Is that the end of what makes Leah Leah? No, it's not. There is something more that is transformed and continues. And this is the role of the heart in these relationships. It's the heart can be what loves us when nothing else will, right? So let's use an example of, let's say I have an old shadow of abandonment that comes up as we shift into these new kinds of relationships. Yes, I agree that abandonment wound it technically needs to die. It technically needs to end, because how am I going to find this new relationship if I'm still holding onto that wound? But the solution for that abandonment wound to transition is not to push, not to kill, not to ignore, not to further suppress. It's to what? It's to love it. It's to love that inner child wound of abandonment. It's to love that limiting belief of I'm not enoughness. It's to love that I don't deserve to have this beautiful spiritual partner in my life. So I'd love to get your thoughts on this, Leah. I really truly see the heart as, I call it, the lantern that we will start to hold up when the inevitable darkness comes, when we transition.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where it's like, well, what do you do when one of these people or these relationships in my world is no longer serving us, or we have to walk away from it? And that may not necessarily even be with a person, that could be with an experience or a place or a thing or a job, right? And when that happens, it's going to be hard and it's going to hurt and it's going to be challenging. And you get to find that guidance within yourself, that light, that lantern, which is that heart, right? Like, what do you need? Well, what's going to help your heart today, right? And even if you don't want to do the things, you do them because you know that it's going to be supportive and it's going to help you, right? And you get to tune into that heart and light that lantern, light that fire that can be that guiding force forward. Because when everything around you is feeling like it's going haywire, right? Like, you get to look in and you get to tune into your heart and allow that to be that light to continue supporting you forwards. Because at the end of the day, you think about it, and we think about it in terms of the physical body and less of
Yeah.
the relationship dynamics. You are nothing without your heart.
Yeah.
You do not survive without your heart. That is the center, that is the pulse, that is the life of
Yeah.
you. And so when you forget, and when everything around you feels dark as all hell sometimes, like, you get to remind yourself that this is your light. So I love what you said, and I agree with that. And
Yeah.
can I share a personal experience?
Yeah, just before you do, Leah, I want you to know, as I'm here with everyone else witnessing, you do that for me, right? This is an example of a beautiful spiritual, one of these new types of relationship we're talking about. You can start to notice that within your relationships. If you have a friend, a lover, a family member that supports you to ignite that heart in the way that we're describing, in my opinion, that is a symptom of one of these new kinds of relationships, right? It's the activation of that spiritual love that was always inside of you, but that person helped you remember. So I just want to honor you because you helped me do that, Leah. But yes, please, please.
I'm grateful that I can be a mirror for you and just remind you of the light that is within you. Because it's so funny, like, say the same thing but in reverse. It's like you help bring that light back in, you help remind me and all those in my world. You were in my group container, my group program, the Mind Body Initiative, this week. And one of the things I said to her was like, I just can't wait till you guys get to meet Harrison, because he's just gonna be here. And like, yes, he's the light, but it like just re-triggers the light within you. And so I love I love that we can do that for each other. um and it's not always easy. Sometimes, like I said, like, sometimes things are so hard and feel so hard, and sometimes they are. Sometimes things get real dark. You're a human being. You come with a lot of emotions, you come with a lot of experiences, you come with a lot of trauma, you come with a lot of wounds, you come with a lot of self-talk. And sometimes things in the world get really dark. And for me, at the beginning of May, I found myself in one of the darkest and most depressed states and that I've been in a long time. And when I say that, I want to clarify that I don't identify with depression, but I was experiencing feelings of depression. And it was really hard. And it was about 2.5 weeks of me being in just a really dark place. I showed up for my priorities, for my clients. I showed up for the things that I needed. But when I wasn't doing that, I was curled up in a ball in my bedroom. I was doing nothing. I was just allowing myself to like be in that space. And sometimes things get there. It gets dark. And that's okay. And that's normal. And you're not alone in that. But for me, what I needed to do in that moment was really dig deep within myself and recognize that I have all of the support I need
Yeah.
within myself.
Mm.
And so I tuned into my heart and I asked my heart, okay, what do I need today? What's going to help me? And I may not want to do it right now in this moment, but I know that by doing it right now and pushing myself through it and allowing that light, that lantern to really keep guiding me forwards, I know that in the future it's going to help and bring me feelings that feel better and are
Yeah.
resonating higher than the ones that I was in. And I
Yeah.
want to relate this to things that I'm sure that you've spoken about on this podcast, something as simple as like a cold shower,
Yeah.
right? Like there's that moment where you're like, oh man, like I do not want to get in this right now. There's that moment where it's like, I feel so warm, I feel nice and happy, and I do not want to turn this to cold, right? But you know that by doing that and by pushing through that moment of discomfort and tuning in to what's inside and knowing that on the other side of it, there's going to be more energy. It's going to be supportive for your physical health and your wellness. And there's going to be that mental muscle that you strengthen that reminds you that you can do hard things and you can get through it and get on the other side.
Mm.
And so again, I think this brings us back to that heart is when you feel like you can't get through it, when you feel like things are
Yeah.
dark and they're challenging, tuning in and allowing that heart to be that guiding force, to be the push, to be the pump that
Yeah.
pushes you through that space. So,
Thank you for sharing that, Leah, and holding space for you to share that beautiful expression. And I'd love to add to it because you're right. You're not alone in that loneliness. You're not alone in that shadow and that depressiveness. And I think the physical body, as you beautifully highlighted, is a gateway back into that love center through the darkness. But something else I think is powerful, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, because this is really the only way I know how to show up in this world is to take it to the most deepest spiritual level. And this is really what the love that is in the heart is made of, right? When you ask, okay, if I understand that the heart, it is a big pump, in your words, of love, okay, what kind of love is it? Is it conditional loving? Is it the type of loving that I have to be this kind of way or I'm not going to be loved? That doesn't feel correct to me. Okay, so if it's not that, what is it? It's unconditional loving. Okay, that feels better. So let's apply that to that situation, that shadowy, dark, heavy situation. I found, Leah, when I've been in those similar situations, the thing that exacerbates the darkness or prolongs the heaviness is not the heaviness itself, it's my judgment of it, right? It's oh, I'm sad again. Oh, I'm depressed again. This is going to impact me this way. This is going to do this. Some should or some story that plays. If I can replace that story with compassion, if I can replace that story with understanding that if I am a consciousness of unconditional love, wouldn't I also love this darkness? Wouldn't I also love this shadow? Wouldn't I also love this depression? Wouldn't I also love this anxiety? So, just to summarize this, and I want to get your feelings on this, Leah, what I've found has helped me through those same situations. And this, just to be very clear, this is what impacts our relationships moving forward, is learning to love ourselves equally in those dark moments as much as we would love ourselves in the light moments. Does that resonate?
absolutely. How can you stand in the light if you don't know the dark and you don't find yourself in the dark, right? And I think this comes back, especially this concept of unconditional love, to just relationships, right? if you desire that true unconditional love within relationships, you get to drop all understandings of what you think and believe they should look like.
Yeah.
Drop the shoulds. There is no should. What is true for you? Right? And every relationship's going to look different, you know? And you you can't you can't push in relationships. You can't push unconditional love. It just is. And it takes that massive level of surrender. And I talk about this like,
You got
I'm not,
you got it all sorted.
no, I absolutely do not.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I, I mentioned earlier
Yeah,
that
it's I think that's another thing, Leah. We have to take each other off these pedestals.
yeah, and it requires the interaction with another person to even get you to the place to recognize where you're like, oh, damn, I've been on a pedestal. Like
Yeah.
sometimes you have to have that action and reaction to
Yeah.
recognize where you are. But I think in allowing this and surrendering to these ideas around relationship and thinking about, what is it that you can do with the people in your world right now? And if someone is not feeling good in your world, how do you get to shift? And can you tune into that knowing within yourself? You may not know exactly what that shift looks like, but what do you know that you need? Right?
Yeah. I have one more question here, Leah, that's just bubbled up that I think will be a beautiful way to end this chat today. And I think I've noticed this has been a big shadow and challenge in my world, and sort of opening up to these new kinds of relationships, this new paradigm, understanding of this new way to be intimate with oneself and another person. And it's the fear of losing the person, fear of what happens if, as an example, I've listened to this podcast today with Harrison and Leah, and I go share this with my intimate romantic partner or share this with my friend, and then I lose them, and then they leave my life. And this connects back to wounds of abandonment and rejection, but I think there's something bigger here. There's a fear of, if I lose this person in my life, I'm not enough. If I lose this person in my life, then who am I? What am I? What is this world that I've built if this person that I love very much and they love me very much is not there anymore? So I'm wondering, I have my own thoughts on this, Leah. I want to hear yours. How do we move through this fear of loss within this relationship context?
Yeah. This one, this one, I feel very deeply. This makes me a bit emotional. Um, and there's a blog that I wrote about maybe about a year ago now, maybe a little bit more, a year and a half, and it was about this exact topic. And as cliche as it sounds, I believe that it's better to have loved than to have lost than to never have loved at all. And I I have some deep abandonment wounds in my life that I've moved through in many powerful ways over the last couple of years. But about 2 years ago, someone walked into my world that changed me forever. I knew immediately upon meeting this individual that they were meant to be in my life. I knew immediately upon meeting this individual that we had been in love in a past life. And I just kept getting these visions and these dreams and all these things coming to me. And when we first started dating, when we first started dating, he was very open about his world and his experience and his path. And his path was to finish building out his sailboat so that he could solo circumnavigate the globe by himself in a sailboat, travel around the whole world. And that wasn't my journey. That wasn't for me to come with. And I knew that. And so I knew that by opting into this relationship because I knew within the first month of seeing him, my heart was just like freaking outside my body. It was just expansive. And I knew it was a love that I wanted to continue feeling. And I also knew that by opting into that love, I was opting into losing him at some point.
Mm.
And it was the hardest lesson that I've ever learned in my life. Coming from a family of divorced parents, coming from a family of stepchildren, coming from partners leaving me. And I got to choose. I got to choose to stay in this, although it might hurt, because it simultaneously felt so good and it was teaching me so much. Or had the choice to completely walk away and say, well, because these abandonment wounds are going to come up at some point, I'm just going to say no and not do this at all. And it was one of the most beautiful loves I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
And he taught me how to love, and he taught me how to love in complete surrender and completely unconditionally. And at the end of the day, what ended up happening was, through sharing that love with each other, we got to the point where he realized that I was not that person for him. And there was another woman that was, and he left me for her. And he did so out of a place where he said, I love you and I respect you so much, and I can't hurt you, and you don't deserve to be with someone that cannot love you unconditionally and cannot fully be with you the way that you deserve and that you are worthy of. And man, that rocked my world. That rocked my world. I've never felt heartbreak like that. I've also never been in love with someone that I have known I've loved in a past life. And in that past life, what had continued to come to me in those visions and in those dreams that I had was, in that past life, he left for war and never returned home to me.
Karmic.
Very karmic, yes. And so, oh man, just coming back to what you asked me, like, it is not easy. It really is not. And it's hard to look at those abandonment wounds, and it's hard to look at the triggers. But you have a choice in this world to opt into the experience and allow it to shift you and to change you, and allow yourself to love that darkness, or to completely avoid it and to avoid evolution.
Yeah. And either choice is loved. So thank you for sharing that beautiful story, Leah. I didn't expect such a beautiful, heartfelt memory to come back in story. Thank you for gracing us with that. And it highlights beautifully this fear that I was speaking about. And I think there's two lessons that it brings up in me as I'm hearing you, and I connect to my own story similar to this. The first is understanding that while we get to experience these lessons within this relationship experience, whatever the person outside of us that we fear losing, whatever choice they end up making, we also have a choice to decide whether their choice becomes a reflection of our worth, right? So their choice to go on their own adventure and do something different that doesn't involve us. I think we have to remember that we have a choice to allow that to dictate, oh, this means I'm broken, this means I'm unworthy, this means I'm not enough, right? Which leads me into the next sort of lesson here around this is, and I shared this when you finished, I also believe that this fear of loss is exacerbated by our worry that we are judged, that we don't do it right, that we don't do the relationship in the way that it's meant to be done. And often this comes from religious programming, cultural programming, right? This understanding that there's something on a cloud outside of us that's ticking us wrong or right. And you said it, Leah, you gave it in your beautiful story. This is a karmic return. And that in itself shows us that no matter how the relationship unfolds, whether it continues for 50 years or it ends after 2 months, it's not about the wrong or right. It's about how open we have become to the lessons that are in front of us. And if there's more to be learnt, at least from a karmic perspective, it'll come again. But we're not bad. We're not evil. We're not broken for not opening our hearts to it. We just made a different choice, and that's okay.
Yeah, and something to add to that too is there's an aspect of trusting that the choice that somebody else is making is what they need
Yeah.
in their own journey. And that may not be what you want, and that may not be what you feel you need, and that may not necessarily be in alignment with what you know within yourself. But you get to trust that what they are choosing is in alignment with their knowing,
Yeah.
and honor that.
Yeah.
And like you said,
So juicy.
if there's more to learn, it will always come back around.
Yeah. Leah, I'm very grateful that I'm holding hands with you as we walk into this new relationship paradigm of the future and everything it will bring us and help us to unfold into. And I'm very grateful for your time today and your love that you've shared with all of us. As we close up here, is there any other final words, anything you want to share with people listening if they've resonated with you to really wrap up and finish this expression from your heart today?
Yeah, something that's coming to me is just inviting you to lean in, inviting you to lean into the discomfort, inviting you to lean into the unknown, to lean into the things that may not be what you've come to learn, what you've come to believe, what you've come to think is the way, is the right way. Like there's no right way other than what is true for you, what is in alignment for you, what you know is feels right for you. And I invite you into exploring what it is that you think you know, what it is that you know, what it is that you believe, and what it is that you think. And I invite you into exploring these relationship dynamics in your world. I invite you into what it's like to go on a date without thinking of where that date's going to go and where that date's going to lead. You know, I invite you into hugging your best friend and doing so with the understanding that they could leave tomorrow. And I invite you into taking a really deep look into the mirror and asking yourself, who would you be if you surrendered to the control of all of the relationships in your world and accepted everything for what it is in the present, with the commitment to consistent communication with those around you to ensure that things feel safe and feel good for all parties involved. And yeah, I invite you into my world in any way, shape, or form. And I'm always super happy to dive into more juicy conversation in my DMs or in my Facebook messages. And love and relationships is something that I'm very passionate about. I feel I was put on this earth to really, really live out these deep lessons around love.
You took my words out of my mouth, Leah. I'm excited to see. I know you're stepping into this in other ways, but I'm excited to see how this expands in your world. And I'm just excited to be a part of it. Thank you for your Thank you for your time today, Leah. I love you very much. And for people tuning in, if you want to connect with Leah, I'm going to put all her details in the show notes. If you've been joining live today on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, all the platforms, you can connect to Leah's profile by clicking on you'll see it somewhere on all the videos that we've been playing today. And I'll also put our original chat. Leah's been on the show before. I'll put that in the show notes on the podcast platform. But with all of that, I love you very much, Leah. Thank you for your time. Thank you for everyone that's tuned in to the podcast, either live or in the replay. We send you so much expansion and consciousness from our heart space. And until next time here on the show, we'll see you again very soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.